Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to look at global conflict through a pretty unique lens, economics. We're digging into a source that follows the money, and it claims the trail leads back to two huge American industries and one very, very prominent political figure. So let's get into the numbers.
Okay, so the source doesn't waste any time. It jumps right in with a pretty bold claim. The idea here is that when you see turmoil around the world, there are two massive industries that aren't just profiting, they're essentially acting as money machines that are supposedly tied directly to Donald Trump. It's a big accusation, so let's see what kind of data they use to back it up.
All right, so first up is money machine number one, the arms industry. Now, this one's probably the more obvious of the two, right? It's the one we all kind of think of first, and it gives us a really good baseline for just how much money we're talking about here.
And to really get a sense of this machine's power, you have to look at the global picture. The source points out that the US isn't just a player in the arms market, it's the player. I mean, look at that, controlling a massive 40% of the entire global market. That's huge. And that huge market share, well, that translates into some pretty mind-boggling revenue. The source cites figures for 2024 showing record-breaking sales. We're talking almost $319 billion. It just shows you the incredible amount of money moving through this industry, especially when there's conflict in the world.
But here's the thing. It's not just about the sales happening right now. The source says you have to look at the pipeline, the future money, and that's where it gets really wild. This table shows the backlog. That's basically guaranteed future orders for just 3 companies. Look at those numbers. Hundreds of billions of dollars in sales are already on the books.
Okay, so the arms industry is obviously a giant. But this is where the analysis takes a really interesting turn. The source basically asks, what if that's not even the biggest money machine in all this? What if there's another one, something even more profitable, that's flying under the radar?
And that brings us to money machine number 2. The source identifies it as liquefied natural gas. You'll hear it called LNG. And according to this analysis, this is where the really, truly astronomical profits are being made.
So what is LNG anyway? Well, think of it as a total game changer for energy. You take natural gas, you cool it way down to minus 162 Celsius, and it turns into a liquid. The crazy part? That shrinks its volume by 600 times. So suddenly, a fuel that was stuck in regional pipelines can now be loaded onto giant ships and sent anywhere in the world. It basically turned natural gas into a global commodity, just like oil.
Okay, so how did this become such a huge moneymaker? The source explains it was basically a geopolitical perfect storm. You see, for years, Europe was hooked on cheap Russian gas. But when the war in Ukraine started, that supply got cut off practically overnight. This created a huge energy crisis, and guess who was ready and waiting with brand new LNG export terminals? The US. It was the right product at the right time.
And this chart really shows you what that means for the bottom line. According to the source, the business model is simple. During a crisis, the profit margins go through the roof. Think about it. Gas is relatively cheap to get in the US, but desperate buyers overseas will pay a huge premium for it. And what this chart shows is that with every new conflict, that profit margin just gets bigger and bigger.
And if you want to see some hard numbers, check this out. The source's data suggests that during the Iran-related crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, US LNG exporters were looking at an extra $870 million in profit. Not for the year, not for the month, but per week. And that's just the extra profit on top of what they were already making.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, that weekly profit adds up incredibly fast. The source's projections are just wild. A 4-month disruption could mean an extra $33 billion in profits, and if that conflict were to drag on for a full year, we could be looking at a staggering $170 billion just in excess profits.
So to really wrap your head around that $170 billion figure, the source puts it in perspective. It compares it to the windfall from the Ukraine war, which they estimated was about $85 billion for the industry in a year. So the potential profit from a year-long Iran conflict could literally be twice as much. It's just a different scale.
So we've seen these two massive money machines, arms and LNG. But here's the crucial part of the source's argument, following the money. This is where the analysis tries to draw a direct line from all these industry profits straight back to Donald Trump, using his policies and personal connections as the roadmap.
Okay, so on the weapons industry side, the source connects a few dots. First, it points to reports that his sons, Eric and Donald Jr., had investments in military drone companies. Then, it highlights Trump's proposal for a massive $1.5 trillion boost to the military budget. And, according to the source, right after that proposal was made public, the stock prices for major defense firms shot up.
But when you get to LNG, the source claims the connections are even tighter. It points to campaign funding, specifically citing the CEO of the top U.S. LNG exporter as a major Trump sponsor. And what followed? A whole wave of policies that were incredibly friendly to the LNG industry. Things like cutting red tape, fast-tracking permits, and ultimately giving the green light to 30 new LNG projects.
And if you want one number to understand the scale of that focus, here it is. The source says that under his administration, more than $500 billion was invested into these new LNG projects. Just an absolutely incredible amount of money pouring into that industry and fueling its massive growth.
So the source kind of sums up its whole argument with this quote. It characterizes Trump's approach to foreign policy during a crisis as being, well, like a sales pitch. That whenever a conflict kicks off, he emerges and essentially shouts a slogan, BOP, or buy our product, whether that product is weapons or natural gas.
And that's really the core of this economic breakdown. The source lays out all this data, connecting conflict to profit and profit to politics. It doesn't claim to have all the answers, but it definitely leaves us with a huge and maybe uncomfortable question to think about. What really happens when geopolitics and big business become so intertwined that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins?